So let me do the recap. Yesterday we did have some technical issues as well. These are unrelated, just so you're not overly concerned. And I do appreciate your concern and all the text messages I received yesterday. Out of headquarters had bad storms and they lost power. So that's why I kept cutting back to old shows and the new show. So we should be back up and running, knock on wood, and I appreciate you joining us as we broadcast live from the Hesselson studio here on Market Street in Corning, doing a redo here. And I appreciate you sticking with us because you're going to be glad you did. We have a very exciting show. As I was mentioning, you might have saw the poster on the screen. We are going to have some of the cast members from the upcoming performance of Something Rotten Jr. That is members of the Corning Painted Post Middle School Drama Club. So they're going to tell us about Something Rotten Jr. That's in the 6 o'clock hour. And then in the 7 o'clock hour, it's been a little while because now he's officially entitled Assemblyman Joe Sempolinski. Assemblyman Joe Sempolinski, former congressman, current chairman of the Steuben County Republican Committee. He will be joining us in the 7 o'clock hour. So that's why I'm glad everything is up and running and sounding good. We'll make sure, hopefully, everything goes out without a hitch. I know the live interview with Joe should go, as of right now, just fine. All right, let's get started. Enough of the chit-chat. And again, thank you for joining us this morning. First off, with some breaking news from last night. As you may have seen, the Laken-Riley Act did pass, again, the House. Congressman Nick Langworthy weighing in on that. This evening, we once again passed the Laken-Riley Act, but the difference is this time it is heading to the president's desk to be signed into law. The days of providing havens to violent criminal illegal immigrants while jeopardizing the safety of American citizens are over. While we cannot bring Laken back or dull the pain of her loss, we can honor her legacy by making our country safer. So thank you to Congressman Langworthy. And to his point there, it feels a little different because now we know when it gets to the president's desk, it will be signed. Also, breaking last night, really late last night, Trump is tapping Sean Curran to lead the Secret Service. Now, Sean Curran is one of the agents who rushed on the stage during the Butler, Pennsylvania assassination attempt. Posting on Truth Social last night, President Trump said, "Sean is a great patriot who has protected my family over the past few years, and that is why I trust him to lead the brave men and women of the United States Secret Service." Trump touted Curran's 23 years of experience at the Secret Service and his work as Assistant Special Agent in charge of the Presidential Protective Division during his first term. The president noted that Curran had direct oversight and responsibility of multiple protectees and enhanced security plans for my residences. Sean has distinguished himself as a brilliant leader who is capable of directing and leading operational security plans for some of the most complex special security events in the history of our country and the world. He proved his fearless courage when he risked his own life to help save mine from an assassin's bullet in Butler, Pennsylvania. Now, Curran was one of several agents who piled on top of Trump last July after a gunman opened fire on then presumptive Republican nominee during the campaign rally in Butler. So that was breaking last night. Trump wrote, "I have complete and total confidence in Sean to make the United States Secret Service stronger than ever before." Also, this came out yesterday afternoon, and it was kind of glanced over, and you almost forget how it works during a Trump presidency, how much news there is. Always constant breaking news, right? And one of those, I think, should be a major story, but kind of got glanced over with everything else going on. President Trump said it's time to take pride in the American flag again. Secretary of State Marco Rubio on Tuesday banned flying any other flags beside the stars and stripes at State Department facilities, from domestic buildings to foreign outposts, in a blow to leftists who have flown gay pride and Black Lives Matter flags on the past on U.S. government buildings. Quote, "Starting immediately, only the United States of America flag is authorized to be flown or displayed at U.S. facilities, both domestic and abroad, and featured in U.S. government content," Rubio ordered. Oh, did you also see that already on some government, what would you want to call it, documents? It is being referred to as the Gulf of America. That's already went into effect. But I continue. The flag of the United States of America united all Americans under the universal principle of justice, liberty, and democracy. These values, which are the bedrock of our great country, are shared by all American citizens, past and present. In the order, the new Trump State Department said the decision was made to be respectful to the American flag. The U.S. flag is a powerful symbol of pride and is fitting and respectful that only the U.S. flag be flown or displayed at U.S. facilities, both domestically and abroad. So kind of getting glanced over with everything else going on. I know the big story is that they released, one of the big stories, the full content of the Oval Office letter that Biden left for Trump. If you want me to read that, I did print it out. I think we have so much to cover this morning that we may glance over that, because I want to ask you, did you watch the first interview, sit-down interview with President Trump with Sean Hannity as president, 47th president? He met with Sean Hannity yesterday for that sit-down interview. Did you watch it? What were your thoughts? We're going to go through a couple things that are being said, what is being focused on during the interview. So that's coming up. I do have to take a short break. I'm glad we're back up and running. Stay with us. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox. Please stay with us. The Frankly Speaking Roof Cam, brought to you by Boss Security in Horseheads. Contact them today for all your business and home security needs. Welcome back as we broadcast live from the Hesselson studio. Again, if you are just joining us, apologize for the tech issues. Well, at the very beginning of this program, but also on yesterday's show, due to the storms going on across the country, we had lost power at our headquarters, and that's why I kept cutting in and out to an old episode. So I apologize. Okay, so Trump speaking with Hannity yesterday, saying that all of the problems that we face in this country, all are solvable. Now, I saw, and I know we talk about this a lot, but the media has not learned its lesson. I went to CNN, and on their website, it was not, if he does 5, or if they do 5 takeaways, 10 takeaways, I'm fine with it. Some are going to be biased. Some are going to just say, well, this was an interesting statement, whatever. But they once again went back to the old fact checking and went through what they deemed all the lies that were told during this interview. Don't you wish there was 0.1% of the scrutiny that Donald Trump has already received put on Biden throughout his full 4 years, You think about and just wait for it, because they're going to start to go after Trump like they tried to during the campaign and suggest he's not healthy, having no self-awareness. Just wait for it. You saw it in the past where they focused on that one time he went up a ramp slowly because it was wet, trying to take away all the times that Biden slipped, whatever. So they're going to do that. They're going to call for some type of cognitive test. They're so predictable, you can see it coming. But you saw Trump, and I think we're all envious, I am anyway, to see what he accomplished and how much he had to do on Inauguration Day. I was exhausted watching it, and I didn't even watch the whole thing. I couldn't make it. I was so tired. So they're going to try that, and it's just like with this. They're calling things lies that aren't lies. They just want to interpret them as lies because Trump said something more generic than they wanted. And I thought, well, no wonder we see story after story of, and in this case, because I mentioned CNN plans to lay off hundreds of employees and cut costs. We saw MSNBC going to a parent company. You've seen now NBC is plotting firings. We learned yesterday that CNN boss Mark Thompson not only plans to announce mass layoffs, and this came out yesterday, that he had warned the top talent at CNN like Jake Tapper and Anderson Cooper to avoid, quote, prejudging President Donald Trump. Because listen, there's still, at the end of the day, Mark Thompson is a business person, and he says, look at Trump winning the popular vote. Look at the numbers that he received. We're alienating over half of the voting population with our coverage. So telling them not to prejudge. Now, I did not specifically watch CNN, but I do have my doubts that they didn't prejudge and didn't have kind of the negative attitude. Like I said on yesterday's program, I'm not going to tell you what mainstream media outlet I was watching. I went through a couple of them. It wasn't Fox. I went through a couple other ones just to see what they were saying during the inauguration. And I think it was more somber than when they were showing Jimmy Carter's funeral. They seemed more upset, more fraught at the inauguration. But the ratings challenge cable news pioneer, that's CNN, will lay off hundreds of employees as it refocuses the business around a global digital audience. The job cuts come as CNN, owned by Warner Brothers Discovery, looks to rearrange its linear TV lineup and build out digital subscription products. Ooh, imagine. Well, it makes sense because if you go to CNN, you can only go to so many articles now in a month, I think. Certain things are subscription only, so they must be struggling. So this should come as no surprise. Now laying off many, this seems to be a common theme, yet they have learned, at least in the coverage I've seen so far, nothing from the last 4 years with their cover-up and helping in the, what arguably could be the biggest scandal in presidential history, the covering up of Biden's mental decline. But also, oh wow, look at all these waves. Also, just the way they've handled Trump during those 4 years and in the campaign specifically. Also, as CNN, Jim Acosta, they're mulling moving him, the anti-Trump anchor, and there's no other way to look at it. He got on his high horse the other day talking about how he was going to be, the white knight, I guess, to save us all from Trump. One of the legacy media's resistance breakout stars from Donald Trump's first term may be disappearing in the dead of night as his second term, meaning Trump's, is now officially underway. Jim Acosta became a household name because of his antagonistic, for lack of a better word, but I think that's not a strong enough word, relationship with Trump and Trump's press secretaries. Now, while CNN's past leadership revealed Acosta's constant sparring matches with the first Trump administration, the network's current leadership appears to be trying to tone down the dramatics. Yeah, Jim Acosta was a prime example of the media wanting to make the story about them. And listen, people in the media are egotistical. And that's why you see the coverage is always about, I feel this way or I feel that. So in this scenario, he loved the attention. He loved the story being about himself. It's very Woodward and Bernstein, meaning these people that go to journalism school, they're told the greatest thing that you could ever do is be Woodward or Bernstein, which is bring down a sitting Republican. Remember, that's the important part, Republican president. And that's what he feels he's doing, is he's attacking Trump and attacking his press secretaries at the time. But then the American people saw, wait a minute, 4 years with no questions. I mean, I honestly asked the question, I'll ask Joe, with the press conferences and now the sit-down interviews, has Trump, he's got to be close in already just 3 days reaching the amount of minutes that Biden gave to the media, specifically to the media, whether sit-down interviews or press conferences, in 4 years. And I'm not, I don't know the numbers, but I'm not exaggerating in my feelings on it. So to see the American people saw that the Jim Acostas of the world only fight or only speak truth to power when it's the power they don't like. Well, it's first reported in the Status newsletter that Acosta was pitched by CNN CEO Mark Thompson to move him from his 1 hour time slot at 10 a.m. to a 2 hour slot beginning at midnight, a move that would effectively exile Acosta to the Siberia of television news, as it was characterized. Acosta is a talented broadcaster who can handle any slot on the network, a CNN staffer said. The midnight thing is shocking, but it is what it is. While the chatter has been described as gossip, the staffer is confident that the prospects of moving Acosta to the midnight time slot is real and suggested it's Acosta's only path forward at the network. Quote, he could have a real slot, but the choice is to not give him one. So not airing until midnight, essentially you've got a show, but almost in name only. And I mentioned all of that about CNN and dropping, again, because of the article I saw this morning that was quote-unquote fact-checking Trump's interview with Hannity. What did you think about that interview yesterday? We do have to take... No, I'm doing good. Okay. I'm getting all in a tizzy here. I apologize. Trump said, when asked about the problems the country faces, he said they're all solvable with time, effort, money, unfortunately, but they're all solvable. We can get our country back, but if we didn't win this race, I really believe our country would have been lost forever. And the more and more we find out about what was going on behind the scenes in the Biden administration, I think he's right. The longer we would have went with that, another 4 more years of either Biden or Harris would have been maybe at that point insurmountable to fix the challenges that we face. Now, continuing, Trump praised House Speaker Mike Johnson as a terrific leader. He also praised Speaker Johnson for how he's unified Republicans on Capitol Hill. You know, these are not easy people. This is a tough group, but they're very unified. Yeah, I'd be curious. He answered a ton of different questions. And again, if you saw it, I'd love to hear your opinion on it. We're going to go through some of them. Asked about his plans to release secret government files on the assassination of former President John F. Kennedy and civil rights leader Martin Luther King Jr., Trump indicated that he would grant the public access to the highly sought-after documents imminently as soon as his team can get a hold of the material. I'm going to release them immediately upon getting. We're going to see the information. We're looking at it right now. And he did hint, and this is, I think, perhaps if CNN was truthful and did more of a takeaway than just trying to attack Trump, I think one of the bigger, I don't want to say bombshells, that term's overused, but one of the bigger statements that Trump made was hinting towards a Biden prosecution. He was asked about the pardons and those type of things that Biden did on his way out the door. He said, it's really hard to say that they shouldn't have to go through it all, meaning his family. Trump said that Biden received, quote, very bad advice to pardon 5 relatives, but not himself. Meaning, the advice should have been, hey, if you want to pardon those 5, you better pardon yourself too. You know what the funny thing is? Maybe the sad thing is, he didn't give himself a pardon, he told Hannity. And if you look at it, it all had to do with him. I mean, the money went to him. Trump said, I went through 4 years of heck, we'll say, by this scum that we had to deal with. I spent millions of dollars in legal fees, and I won. But I did it the hard way. It really is hard to say that they shouldn't have to go through it all. So it's very hard to say. Remember this. Joe Biden got very bad advice. Joe Biden has very bad advisors. Somebody advised Joe Biden to give pardons to everybody but him. Now, at one point, Hannity asked Trump if he had ordered the DOJ to investigate the former president. He said, look, he didn't give himself a pardon, and he didn't give some other people a pardon that needed it. Biden, anyway, we know, I don't have to go through all the various pardons that Biden gave to his family members. We have discussed that extensively. But hinting there, or at least getting people speculating exactly what he could mean by that, making the bad decision, in Trump's mind, of pardoning everybody in his family but himself. He also ripped Governor Gavin Newsom. We'll talk about that and a few other issues. I do got to play a little bit of catch up here. Keep those comments, keep those waves coming in. If you are just joining us, in just a little bit, as a matter of fact, we're going to be talking with a few, it's just a quick interview, but a few cast members from the upcoming performance of Something Rotten Jr., and that's with the Corning Painted Post Middle School Drama Club. That'll be coming up after the next segment. So we got one more segment than that. And then in the next hour, Assemblyman Joe Sempolinski will be joining us live in the studio. So stay with us. This is Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox. The Frankly Speaking Roof Cam brought to you by Boss Security in Horseheads. Contact them today for all your business and home security needs. Welcome back as we broadcast live from the Hesselson studio here on Market Street in Corning. Again, in the next segment, we'll be talking to members of Something Rotten Jr. and the Corning Painted Post Middle School Drama Club. And then in the 7 o'clock hour, looking forward to it, Assemblyman Joe Sempolinski will be joining us. A couple comments from viewers. I have to say that I'm relieved that Biden can no longer cause more harm and that I was worried as to what else he could do during his last days in office. I agree. Of course, there's the speculation when Harris lost, would he put Harris in so she would be, for 2 reasons, so she would be the first woman president, but also it would change for petty reasons, it would change all of the pre-printed things that Trump has had, the hats and the signs and the flags that say 45 and 47, all those type of things. That's kind of I'm not going to say minuscule one, that would have been a huge, but there's things like that everybody thought, wow, there's a lot of time between Election Day and January 20th. What could be done? So yes, it is kind of nice to wake up without that thought of what could happen. Comment from a different viewer. Good morning, Frank. Good morning. I see that Trump is sending troops and guards to the border, and it's over. And it's overdue, thanks, Trump. Oh, I'm sorry. Let me try it again. I see that Trump is sending troops and guards to the border, and it's overdue. Thanks, Trump. Yes. Welcome to President Trump's Fortress America. In just 3 days, the commander-in-chief has moved to dramatically beef up security at the border with plans to send in 10,000 U.S. troops and detain and deport any illegal border crossers. The sweeping changes underway are meant to help U.S. law enforcement agencies to stop illegal migrants from entering the country and make it easier to send back the ones who are already here. Targeted arrests of hundreds of illegal immigrants with criminal records began in sanctuary cities across the country yesterday, and the Department of Justice is vowing to crack down on sanctuary jurisdiction that interferes with immigration enforcement. And I see that they were reporting that some of these areas with strong numbers of illegal migrants are like ghost towns right now, people hiding in a way. The rapid shift in enforcement stands in stark contrast to the open borders that we've had for the last 4 years, as you know. So 10,000 troops, and guess who's taking it seriously? Mexico, because Mexico builds a giant shelter to prep for Trump's promised mass deportations. Mexican authorities have begun constructing giant tent shelters in a city to prepare for a possible influx of Mexicans deported under U.S. President Donald Trump's promised mass deportations. I don't know how to say the town or the city. It's Ciudad Juarez. They'll have the capacity to house thousands of people and should be ready in a matter of days. It's unprecedented, said a municipal official, as workers unloaded long metal bracing from tractor trailers parked in the large empty lot yards from the Rio Grande, which separates the city from El Paso, Texas. So they understand what could be and will be coming. All right, thank you for that comment. We're talking about President Trump's interview. And, yesterday we didn't get a chance because of the technical issues. We never had a chance to talk about that bishop that went after Trump in a really, I think, an unfortunate setting at that prayer service. I think she got what she wanted. She was quickly whisked away the next day to The View, where The View praised her. To the people that she was trying to impress, she will receive a lot of pats on the back. And that's all she cares about. She doesn't care about kind of the protocol or perhaps taking the high road or whatever the case may be, or, the job of what I would think are religious leaders, which is to save souls. It wasn't about that. It was to attack policy of the now president of the United States. Now, this is not something you would see in other forms. You wouldn't see Biden being criticized for perhaps his abortion stance at a Catholic service, because there's times that you stay classy, so to speak, and there's other times that you use your bully pulpit, and that's what she did. But we haven't really had a chance to talk about that. We can if you want. Going back to that interview with, how am I doing on time? We're doing good. Going back to that interview with Hannity that Trump gave yesterday, he ripped Governor Gavin Newsom. If you actually poll the people, they don't want sanctuary cities. But Gavin Newsom does, and these radical left politicians do. And if you asked him why, they couldn't even, I watched Gavin Newsom try to answer that question. He was unable to even answer. He looked like an idiot. He was unable to answer. I took criticism because I said, you have to manage your forest. And he did say that for years. He was way ahead of the curve. And then he said, that's like a nuclear weapon went off, what's happening in Los Angeles. The fire was just raging. And then it would catch to another area, another area, another area. It took a week and a half, and I've never seen anything like it. We look so weak. Why is it that you don't want millions of gallons of water a day pouring through California? Millions of gallons of water is diverted way up north in California into the Pacific Ocean. He also was hoping to link future federal aid funding to California on them practicing the science of forestry. A number of them actually, Finland told me this, Austria told me this, and it was beautiful the way they expressed it. They said, we live in a forest. We are a forest nation. That's beautiful. Far more beautiful than what they have in California, and much more flammable. Now we know that Newsom has tried to put through Trump-proof plans to stop him from really, in his mind, meddling in California. But also in that discussion, he talked about these natural disasters, talking about FEMA specifically. Trump said FEMA is a whole nother discussion, because all it does is complicate everything. FEMA has not done their job for the last 4 years. I had FEMA working really well, but unless you have certain types of leadership, it gets in the way. And FEMA is going to be a whole big discussion very shortly, because I'd rather see the states take care of their own problems. Oklahoma is very competent. But you know what? If they get hit with a tornado or something, let Oklahoma fix it. You don't need, and then the federal government can help them out with the money. FEMA is getting in the way of everything, and the Democrats actually use FEMA that's a good point, not to help North Carolina. And again, like I said, threatening California that they wouldn't get disaster money until they changed their water policies. And he said this is a political thing. I don't know what it is. They talk about the Delta smelt. It's a tiny fish like this, and they say it's an endangered species. Well, how is it endangered? No wonder it's endangered. It's not getting any water. But now there's going to be a showdown. Trump's imminent visit to fire-ravaged Los Angeles tomorrow will bring him in direct contact and conflict with none other than Governor Gavin Newsom and Mayor Karen Bass, both of whom have failed to protect the city. Trump and Newsom have clashed frequently in the past over California's mismanagement, or management, however you want to look at it, of its forests. It's going to be interesting, that meeting. Very, very interesting. But we have to take a break. When we come back, a quick little interview with some guests from Corning Painted Post Middle School Drama Club, because they have an upcoming performance. Let me put it up on the screen here for you. They have an upcoming performance of Something Rotten. Starts tonight. Yes, tonight is opening night. Through the 25th at 7 p.m. and then January 26th at 2 p.m. at the Corning Painted Post High School Theater. Keep that in mind. They are the middle school drama club, but they are holding it at the high school theater. And our upcoming guests, which I really look forward to speaking with them. If I can get this up on the screen just so I can give credit where credit is due. And I'm not going, there we go. Those are our upcoming guests joining us from the cast. So they'll be joining us in the next break. Then when we come back, who knows? Maybe Assemblyman Joe Sempolinski will be here. If not yet, we'll have a few other things that we can catch up on. So make sure that you stay with us. We got an exciting show this morning. So we will be right back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV. Big Fox, stay with us. The Frankly Speaking Roof Cam brought to you by Boss Security in Horseheads. Contact them today for all your business and home security needs. Welcome back to Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV Big Fox. I'm your host, Frank Acom, and we are broadcasting from the Hesselson studio. And joining me in the studio this morning is some of the cast of Something Rotten Jr., which opens tonight. Hey, thanks for being on the program, guys.
Yeah, thank you.
Hi.
So this is opening night. Are you nervous?
A little.
Yeah.
Yeah?
Excited, but
Kind of.
nervous.
Do you think you're ready?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think so.
Maybe. I don't know.
If you're not at this point, it's too late, right?
Yes. Yes, probably, maybe not.
Right, exactly. So I thought that was a bad way to start the interview because I should have you each introduce yourselves, if you don't mind.
I'm Charlie Veely.
I am Jack Bronfenbrenner.
And I am Keith Huff.
And what characters do you play in Something Rotten Jr.?
I'm B Bottom.
Okay.
I am Nigel Bottom.
And I am Nick Bottom.
Okay. All right. So I don't know a lot about Something Rotten Jr. So would one of you mind telling me not necessarily the plot, but what it's like for someone that's not familiar with it, like myself?
So basically, there's this family, the Bottom family, and there are these two brothers, Nick and Nigel Bottom, the main
Yes.
characters. And
We're trying to
basically,
make a show. We're trying to.
yes.
Oh, so it's a
Competing with
play like in a
Shakespeare.
play.
This
Yeah.
is we're in the Renaissance period, and
Oh.
we're trying to outwit Shakespeare. Is what
Oh,
we're trying to do.
okay.
Yeah, and like he's super jealous of Shakespeare, and I'm super in love with Shakespeare.
Okay.
Because, like,
He's a poet.
and
I just want to
didn't
make
even
money.
know.
Is really
Oh,
what
interesting.
we're trying to do.
No, he just
And then
wants
she's
to,
along for the ride.
No,
I'm trying to be his right hand man.
Oh, okay.
maybe all right.
Yeah, I don't want you to give too much away. So, as I mentioned, tonight is the opening performance. How much work goes into this play, Something Rotten Jr.?
A lot of work.
A lot of work?
A lot of work.
It's
A lot of long.
It's not a lot of work like Hollywood, but it's like a lot of work.
Yeah. When
a
did
lot
you?
of long nights.
When did you start? Like, not ballpark. When did you start your first practice?
Like October.
when was that?
Like October.
End of October, maybe?
Oh my goodness,
It was like
that's a commitment.
I don't know.
Because
I have like I don't even like know.
our stage got
months.
they're redoing our stage, so
Okay.
we have to do the stage or the musical at the high school. And since the high school musical is going to be going on next month, we have to do ours earlier.
Okay.
So we had to start a little bit earlier and go a little bit quicker throughout things.
Are you excited to play at the high school theater? Because I know I went to your school, but when it was West High School, so I know that's a beautiful theater too. But that's a pretty nice theater over at Corning.
It's a lot bigger.
Yeah.
It's really big.
Yeah. Our current theater's getting renovated. I'm
Yeah.
pretty sure you know that, though.
Yeah, yeah. So as you prepare and opening night tonight, as I mentioned, what has practice been like for the last few days? Is it nerve-wracking? Are you all kind of coming together, bonding, preparing?
It's been pretty long.
I would
but
say-
it's really fun.
We've basically just been running the show.
Okay.
And, like,
Yeah,
fixing
and
those little bits.
We get faster and faster at running the show since we had to stop a lot with the musical instruments coming in and playing for us.
We're basically just polishing it at this point. Like,
Pretty much.
It's
Okay.
Just
pretty-
making sure that it's pretty perfect.
Okay.
Yeah.
How many times do you think you've performed the play from beginning to end, if you had to guess?
5?
3.
3?
Well, like 3 from beginning to end.
Okay.
But we've done the first act, the
No
second act, the first act, the second act.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
probably like 3 or.
3 or 4, yeah.
So and this is a question for each individual one. Why did you try out in the first place? Let's start there. We'll go the opposite side.
My family is pretty into musical theater.
Okay.
And I did it in 6th grade, and I loved it. Did it in 7th grade, and I loved it, and I just decided to come back.
Yeah.
I just think it's so cool that to perform, like, I don't know. I don't really know. I just did it.
Okay.
Because,
That's
like-
fair.
I've loved Something Rotten since I was really little, and I've always liked the character, and I also just love performing and acting for musical theater. I think it's really fun.
Okay. Let me ask you then. You asked a question I didn't have on my sheet. When you said you've always loved Something Rotten, Junior, is this, by ignorance here, is it a movie or have you seen it live in performance
I
before?
have not seen it live, but
Okay.
the original Broadway version is on Spotify, and when I was little, I listened to it. It's not the most appropriate, though. So
Oh,
I
okay.
wasn't that little, but I was like 10.
Oh, okay.
I don't really care.
Okay. Now,
Ours is appropriate.
yeah, of course, yours
Ours
is,
is
that
appropriate.
goes without saying. I knew that yours
Ours
would
is
be.
the junior, yes.
Yes, so I totally understand. What I heard in my research, my extensive research, is that it's a wacky cast of over-the-top characters, and you've kind of described that already. So how do you prepare to be a wacky, over-the-top character?
It comes with as we
It just comes with the acting,
yeah
basically. Like,
as
the script, like, you just feel obliged to be a wacky character.
Okay.
the more you speak, the more you go through it. Kind of like what he said, it kind of just comes along with the show until at the very end, it's just you're all of a sudden you're that character.
But like when you like first get the script to like notes, and then at the end, it just kind of comes along.
Sure.
Jack is no more, only Nigel Bottom.
So okay, so you're good. You know the lines. How big? I know you're 3 of the cast. How big is the cast?
Like,
It's pretty big.
yeah.
40, 50?
Oh my goodness.
60.
60.
probably.
Okay, 60.
I
Do I hear
totally
70?
didn't
How do you prepare for what I understand is kind of larger song and dance numbers?
We've had a lot of like long nights and a lot of time on them.
Like, they don't
Practice.
really feel that long once you're doing them.
Yeah.
Like,
Practice. Practice.
like when I first heard
Repetition.
the song a musical, like, I thought it was so long, but it's really not that long.
Like, after you get into dance and you
Like-
start singing, it just time flies.
It just goes really fast.
What's more difficult, the choreography or the acting itself?
I would
I feel like it
say
could go either or.
Yeah.
if the choreography is more difficult in one song, if it's a faster tempo, it's going to
Yeah,
be more
it
difficult.
pretty much just
Yeah.
depends.
But
What's it like behind the scenes with a cast that large?
chaos.
Yeah, just chaos.
Oh,
It's
just a
chaos.
lot of chaos.
People just trying to switch around sides.
Yeah, we have to switch sides with which we have to enter. It's people looking at scripts to know when what line they're supposed to say when they come on stage.
Yeah.
But
And I know this has come up in past interviews that I've had with people putting on performances. One thing that is kind of overlooked sometimes, but how important it is for the people behind the scenes that aren't doing the acting and how much work they put into it too.
Oh, yeah.
Without them, we wouldn't have a show.
Yeah, right.
Without them, we
we
wouldn't have a show.
with all of the lighting, and they put that together really fast. We had 2 days left before, so this was 2 days ago. We didn't have any lighting, and all of a sudden they just
Magically
managed to
appeared.
put together. Yeah.
Oh wow.
They work very hard.
So every day there's almost something new when you practice. Would you say that?
Just putting one thing on top of another.
Now you had mentioned why you got involved and you all seem to enjoy acting. So this is kind of a question that I think I know the answer to. Will you be doing more plays and musicals in the future?
Yes,
Yeah.
Definitely.
The next one you can do.
I hope so.
Yeah. So before we go, what do you want people to know about the play that aren't familiar with Something Rotten Jr.?
It's a comedy. I feel like people don't come to musicals if they don't know about them.
Mm-hmm.
And what we want to kind of take away, or what I really want to take away, is that it's really funny.
Yeah. Yeah.
It references a whole lot of other plays that
Especially
some I know,
musicals.
some I don't know.
But the people who are, musical.
And also what he said, it's a comedy, and it uses those things to comedic effect.
Yeah. So anything you'd like to say before we go?
Come see something on Junior
That's what I was,
High
I was
Come see
hoping.
something on January 23rd through the 26th,
And
please.
that's right. So it's tonight through the 25th at 7 p.m. and then the 26th at 2 p.m. Something Rotten Junior. You can get your tickets online. I'll put that up on the screen here in just a moment. Thanks so much for being on the show, and best of luck with everything. All right.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys. All right. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking. Stay with us. The Frankly Speaking Roof Cam, brought to you by Boss Security in Horseheads. Contact them today for all your business and home security needs. Welcome back as we broadcast live from the Hesselson's studio. Thank you so much again to our guests this morning. Appreciate them being on the program. I was trying to get their names back up here, but I don't see the screen. But thank you again for the cast members from Corning Painted Post Middle School Drama Club, Something Rotten Junior, which opens tonight and runs through the 25th at 7 p.m. and then on the 26th at 2 p.m. So thank you again to our guests for being on the show, and there they are. Okay, a couple comments. I missed a few as we were coming in from break. We'll try to get to those before Assemblyman Joe Sempolinski joins us a little bit later on. First, Biden was never in charge. This is from a viewer. When he tried to act like he was, all he did was embarrass himself and the nation. They never cared about the man, just made sure that they had their puppet in place. At least it is very obvious that there is one person in charge now. It can't be candy-coated. If Trump wasn't elected this time, our society as we know it would no longer exist. Global power has finally taken a step back and needs to never be allowed back for our own freedoms to remain intact. Comment from a different viewer. I know why they want the sanctuary cities. They think they will make Democratic voters out of them. Thank you very much. By the way, speaking of one man in charge now, and we talked about the deep state. I know Trump talks about it a lot. There is a report coming out, specifically from the Wall Street Journal, that says the deep state is so concerned about Trump that it's filled with anxiety and confusion about Trump's promise to terminate rogue and corrupt actors. Is that not a good thing? That's a wonderful thing. And I don't want to go through all the specifics, but the reports were confirmed by the Associated Press and NBC News, which reported several firings and reassignments of DOJ officials. The term administrative state specifically describes the phenomenon of unaccountable and unelected administrative agencies, including the national security apparatus, exercising power to create and enforce their own rules. It's kind of nameless, faceless bureaucrat that we talked about so often on this program. This is what we're learning. Human resource managers across the government had to call recent hires with start dates after February 8th to inform them that their offers had been rescinded. Managers fielded panicked inquiries from staff over returning to the office and from transgender employees about whether gender-neutral bathrooms would be eliminated from federal offices. Employees expressed concern over whether the Department of Government efficiency teams dispatched to agencies would have the security clearances to review sensitive information. Seems like they might have some stuff they're concerned about others seeing. In a late-night post on Truth Social, Trump said the Presidential Personnel Office was actively in the process of identifying and removing over 1,000 presidential appointees and singled out 4 in particular. Among them, and I don't want to go through each individual person. It doesn't matter to the point that we're making. Again, this is coming from the Wall Street Journal. At the Justice Department, several top career officials in the criminal and national security divisions were removed or reassigned. People familiar with the matter said the first part of the larger planned shakeup at the agency with which Trump has long sparred. Employees there have been increasingly on edge as Trump and his nominees have attacked the department, with many leaving on their own for law firms and other private sector jobs. More than 15 people have so far moved, one person said. In addition to national security, some of the employees worked in areas such as international affairs. The changes are meant to align the departments with the Trump administration's priority of an increased immigration enforcement, one person said. Okay. Now we see that I don't know if you've been following this, but Senator Chris Murphy, who once called Trump an existential threat to democracy, is now blocking all of Trump's nominees. This has been very frustrating. I've watched a few clips of it on social media, or not on social media, on YouTube. I don't think that's considered technically social media. Senator Chris Murphy, Democrat from Connecticut, disrupted Senate Republicans' plans to quickly confirm President Donald Trump's national security nominees on Tuesday night when he objected to bypassing lengthy procedural votes that are routinely skipped. Quote, unfortunately, we were at the point of almost having a consent agreement to have a vote on the confirmation of John Ratcliffe to be the CIA director tomorrow. Not today, not yesterday, when it should have happened, but tomorrow, said Chairman Tom Cotton. But the senator from Connecticut has decided to object at the last minute. I don't really understand the objection to Mr. Ratcliffe. He was confirmed by the Senate to be the director of the National Intelligence. He was fully vetted through the bipartisan process in the Senate Intelligence Committee. We voted him out yesterday on a 14-3 vote. During his objections, Murphy said there were serious concerns from some Democrats about Trump's CIA pick, John Ratcliffe. Quote, I don't think it's too much to ask to make sure that we have a full, real debate that lasts 2 days on the Senate floor. Should come as no surprise. As I said, we can talk about the woke bishop, Marian Edgar, Budd. She defended her lecturing of Trump on The View, and The View just praised her up and down. This was at the National Prayer Service, where traditionally it is not political. Of course, she turned it political and is very proud of it, and it looks as if she got exactly what she was hoping for, which is kind of the attention, the pats on the back from the people that she deems the most important, the kind of the far left. One thing, in case, and we're probably not going to get to this when Joe shows up, there is a really interesting piece by Kristen Fleming at the New York Post. If you get a chance, I would highly recommend you just give it a quick read. And Kristen Fleming titles the piece, Hey, Anna Wintour, I dare you to put Usha Vance on the cover of Vogue. And it goes through and it really highlights how they're basically a Democrat propaganda magazine, if you will, and how many times they had various not presidents, excuse me. Well, yeah, presidents, but first ladies on the cover. And of course, we know that Melania very often did get snubbed, even though she was a model. So she's saying, you know, I dare you. I dare you to put, who looked great, of course. Many people talking about it. Usha Vance looking great and dressed very nice at the inaugural events. And she goes through the specifics of the fashion that I just don't understand myself. It's not something I've studied, but I thought it was a very interesting piece. The lefty resistance, which captured all mainstream institutions in 2016 and cast from polite society anyone who wasn't a faithful soldier, is dying. It's dusty and boring, as out of style as skin-tight skinny jeans. The Vances are the future. And if Vogue was really faithful to its name, Winter would shake things up and widen the tent. But that would require taking a fashion risk. That's a little bit different off topic than what we're normally talking about. But I thought it was kind of interesting and kind of an important conversation that could be had. We are going to talk about New York State issues with Assemblyman Joe Sempolinski, because now as Assemblyman, he has an insight to that, just like he has an insight to what's going on in Washington as a former congressman, and then even the local level because of his being chairman of the Steuben County Republican Committee. So we'll be talking to him about that. Oh, there's also a piece. Yeah, I'm running late. There's also a piece. Biden grants clemency. We know that. But one of the people that he gave clemency to was a drug dealer convicted in a double slaying of an 8-year-old boy and his mom, which has sparked outrage even from Democrats. As we learn more about these clemency, a lot of people saying, wait a minute, who told him? They're even admitting, who was it? Richard Blumenthal, kind of admitting what we all knew. I wonder if I can find the quote real quick before we have to go to a break. Admitting what we all knew, saying, it seems to me that someone dropped the ball here to let this person get released. Well, who dropped the ball? If it wasn't our president, Joe Biden, who was it? Who was working behind the scenes? Hey, there he is. The Assemblyman's coming in. First time being able to say that. Assemblyman Joe Sempolinski going to join us in just a second. Stay with us. Frankly Speaking Roof Cam brought to you by Boss Security in Horseheads. Contact Boss Security today for all your business and home security needs. And joining me in the studio, Assemblyman Joe Sempolinski. That's the first time we've been able to say that. Congratulations, buddy.
It's official. Yeah, I've been up in Albany. I've had several weeks of session so far, and I got to sit through the State of the State.
We're going to talk about that. And the performances before.
Oh yeah, that was a lot. of song and dance.
Yes.
And usually that's a metaphor. Not in this
Accurate,
case. It
accurate.
was song and dance.
Well, we played your swearing in. How did it feel? I mean, you've been through 2 now amazing, very amazing swearing ins. What did it feel? Great job on the speech, by the way.
Thank you. And it was a real pleasure and wonderful to have my family there.
Mm-hmm.
We were able to do that when I was in Washington. We were able to do that in Albany. And, you know, in many ways, what motivates what I do is, you know, my kids, especially my older daughter and JoJo and what she deals with. So having my wife and my 2 daughters there, both my parents were there.
Yeah.
My mother-in-law even came.
Very
It
nice.
was great. Yeah. So we had a wonderful time, and there are 6 freshman Republican Assembly members, and they all, you know, have their own background, but they all seem to be very earnest as to why they're there. And 5 of the 6 represent vaguely sort of this part of the world. There are 2 that live in Erie County. There's one that lives in Chautauqua County, myself, and then one that lives in Livingston County. So that even is a further bond among that group, that we're all sort of dealing with some of the same issues.
Has it become old hat for your family? And they're like, we're done with swearing in. we have a life to get to.
They enjoyed participating in it. What was neat about it is my daughters were a little bit older this time. They're
that's
they're
true.
6 and 5. And so last time, you know, they were 2 and 3, and so they could at least appreciate a little bit what was going on. My younger daughter knew that Daddy had gotten a new job, and he was starting a new job. That's how she interpreted it. Yeah. And, you know, she didn't quite understand why they were making such a big deal about it,
Right.
and why his office was so ornate. But she very much liked the assembly chamber. And I told a story during my speech about, you know, how my kids sort of keep me grounded, and my younger daughter, she understood the election as I had a meeting.
Right. Well,
You know, so my meeting is on Tuesday, and her birthday was on Thursday of that week. And she literally, I said this in my speech, she literally sat me down that Sunday, and just to make sure that my priorities in order.
Right.
You know, she's turning 5. It's a big deal. And she said, listen, I know you've got your meeting on Tuesday, but on Thursday is my birthday. So, you know,
So just remember.
get your stuff together.
Yes,
was the implication
Yes.
of that conversation.
And we heard the speech. It did a great job. So what's it been like so far? I mean, obviously you had the experience in Congress and now in Albany. How's it relate? How's it different?
Yeah, I get asked that a lot, especially by actually Assembly members. Because,
Oh, yeah.
you know, none of them have served in Washington. They sort of want to understand, you know, I think some of it is best practices, like what works there, what works here. And the way I explain it to people is, if Washington is in Spanish, the state is in Portuguese.
Oh, okay.
Where it's close. There's a lot of similarities, but they're not quite mutually intelligible.
Oh.
And the job is the same job. Being an assemblyman is the same job in the state structure as being a House member is in the federal structure. You're
Okay.
in the people's house. You're in the lower house of the legislature with smaller districts, closer to the people. That's the role you're supposed to serve, is being on the front line of constituent service and also policy making. And obviously the Senate is then a little bit more removed. So you're doing what you are doing is exactly the same U.S. House to Assembly. The how is a little different. The procedures are radically different. The scheduling of how they do session and when they're off session is different. So there are a lot of differences in sort of the day-to-day nuances of it, and so you sort of got to get used to that.
Yeah.
You play one instrument, now you're playing a different instrument.
Yeah, right.
But it's still music, right? And you may be playing
I've never
even the
heard
same
that
song.
called. I've never heard what called in Albany or Washington music.
No, it's
but
not
okay.
good.
All right. If that's a word you want to use,
It may not be a tune that everybody likes, but yeah. So there is enough similarities that I have found the congressional experience was a help. Just as there
sure.
are enough similarities that I found being a congressional staffer helped to be a state staffer.
Right.
But there are differences such that you have to sort of get used to it.
Oh,
But
sure.
I think it's easier for me to get used to it than maybe it would be for someone else.
And we are going to talk about, obviously, there's a lot of stuff going on with Trump. We want to talk to you about that. But let's talk a little bit more about the state. So recently, Governor Hochul released her $252 billion budget. What I think was interesting, I think one of the reasons that you specifically won your race, and I haven't told you this to your face, but it was because of your campaign pledge to not spend a penny over $80 million on a staircase. Do you remember
$1 million staircase?
The $80 million on it. But
Yeah.
that kind of encompasses what we're talking about when we talk about the spending in Albany.
Yeah. So
And Joe didn't really do that, by the
No,
way.
right. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Thank you. I appreciate that. Clarify for the folks. I thought it was a fiscal concern. So I've been describing it as a $250 billion budget.
Yeah, that's a
you
great
know,
way to
so
put
it's now become easier to describe the state budget with a $1 trillion descriptor than it is a $1 billion descriptor. That, to me, is sort of the threshold that we've crossed with this budget. So, you know, there are legitimate things. I'm a conservative. I'm not an anarchist.
Right.
So certainly in a massive budget, you're going to find things that need to be done, and you know, the state has a constitutional responsibility to fund schools and do things. But what we should do is we should compare ourselves to our peer group. You know, if you run a company
Right.
and you make a widget, well, you're going to say, all right, am I doing better or worse than the other companies in my industry, right? So the peer group really for the state of New York is Texas and Florida.
Right.
You know, those are the states that are closest in our size and scale and what have you. And they spend dramatically less, not slightly less than we spend. They spend dramatically less. We spend about as much as them put together.
Wow.
And remember, we're the smallest of those three states.
Yeah.
We didn't used to be.
Yeah.
We are now. We're the smallest of those.
We have
three
the same
states.
residents.
Right. Yeah, exactly. You know,
Former New York
half
residents.
half the folks in Palm Beach used
Yeah.
to live in New York.
Yep.
Including the president.
Yeah. Right.
So the idea that, all right, these other states, they're spending dramatically less. That's the first step.
Yeah.
So you sort of noticed, all right, something is completely out of whack. And again, it's not 10%. It's like, again, very close to both of them put together
Right.
with us. So, all right, well, maybe, what are the outcomes, right? Are they getting a better deal or a worse deal? And people are voting with their feet,
Yeah.
as you just pointed out. You know, we lead the nation in out-migration. So we're spending dramatically more. And per capita, I think we're spending more than any state. You know, California has a bigger budget than New York, but they have a dramatically bigger population.
Right.
But per capita, we're spending more. So we're paying the biggest bill, and we're not getting the best
Yeah. Bang
results.
for a buck. Yeah.
And the results are we want safety and prosperity, and we're failing on all of those things. And the other point to bear in mind, you know, want to compare federal to state.
Yeah.
The federal government can deficit spend, and it does.
And it does well.
It does every year, and worse and worse and worse. So they can spend money that they don't take in. They can effectively produce print money or, you know, sell debt, whatever, however you want to phrase it. But they can deficit spend. The state has to have a balanced budget.
Yeah.
The state cannot deficit spend. It cannot spend more than it takes in. So that means if it's spending $250 billion, it's taking $250 billion from the people of New York. And one of the other problems that states have, and this exacerbates the outflow, is if you are the United States and you have a particular tax policy, what have you, well, there are so many other advantages to other countries that, you know, would you really want to live in another country other than the United States because of our level of security, prosperity, technology, you know, freedom, all these other things? I would certainly not want to live in any other country other than America, despite the fact that America has problems,
Sure.
right? The difference between New York and Pennsylvania, between New York and New Jersey, between New York and Florida, New York and Tennessee, New York and Texas, it's a lot easier to make that jump.
Yeah.
And if you're talking about people that are you know, of means, to whom, you know, their income really has an impact on the state budget, they're the most mobile people on the entire planet.
Yeah.
And so this voting with your feet not only has political implications, but it also has major budgetary implications.
Yeah. We got to make it up somehow, right?
Right. And New York State has lived for decades fat and happy off of Wall Street. That's basically why the state can spend so much money, is because it has the global financial center in that state. And they tax the bonuses and the salaries of those people. And generally that industry does very well. But that industry is especially mobile.
Yeah.
If you own a factory, it's tough to pick up that factory from New York and move it, although people do it.
Yeah. Almost daily.
If you are working in finance, especially if you're the upper echelons of that industry. You know, if I'm 25 years old and I want to get in finance, I probably still want to be in Manhattan so I can get to know people and build a Rolodex. I guess maybe not use the word Rolodex anymore.
John.
Now, well, build my contact list, build my network.
Rolodex.
Yeah, get my LinkedIn page.
There goes our young audience.
There we go. They all just turn up. What's a Rolodex? It's next to my fax machine. But, you know, you're trying to establish yourself in the industry. If you're at the upper echelons, well, you know, people come to you, and you can do it from a laptop. You can do it from as long as you got a high-speed internet connection. Yeah. You can do it from Palm Beach. You can do it from Tahiti. You can do it from Mars if Elon Musk, you know, gets his way, which I'm all for. So the state is completely out of whack. The governor's executive budget, which is what we were talking about, which is what released this week, is the beginning of the budget process, not the end. We're at the end of the beginning. So the way it works is the governor produces her proposal. Then the Assembly produces a proposal, and the Senate produces a proposal after a series of budget hearings, which will start on Monday. They have a budget hearing for each section of the budget. Then, once those three proposals come together, that negotiation sort of goes behind closed doors, sadly, between the Speaker, the Majority Leader, and the Governor to hammer out a budget. Now, what usually happens is the Assembly and Senate, so-called one-house budgets, their proposals, which will, you know, come out in a couple months, or few weeks, they're usually more liberal than the governor's budget on spending. So it's probably going to go up from here.
Yeah.
So we have started out on a path that's completely out of whack with what the people need and want, clearly by their voting of their feet, and it's going to get worse between now and the end of the fiscal year on March 31st.
And I also like that in her budget, she somehow already blames Trump.
Yeah.
Isn't that amazing how quickly that works? Also, and I want to ask you this, and then we'll get on to the national stuff. There are numerous things we could bring up, but in a budget this big, obviously, like you said, there's going to be the good and the bad.
Sure.
And most of it bad, but you'll find something. But what do you think of this new push by Hochul about public safety? You've got the voluntary commitment, and you've got some of these things. Is it because Richie Torres tried to get ahead of her? Have you seen that? I mean, he had an op-ed that made it sound like he was John Wayne.
Yeah, and Richie Torres is a liberal.
He was like a defund the police kind of guy.
Yes, he was a defund the police guy.
It wasn't
The governor's been pointing that out, which is going to be an interesting dynamic between now and next June.
And if you don't know, it sounds like Richie Torres is going to a primary.
Possibly primary the governor, I think that there's a very good chance that she's not the nominee.
I do too.
Next year.
And I don't know if it's Torres, but right now he sounds good. He saw the success of Lee Zeldin with the public safety, said, let's go for it.
And I think, politicians are, they observe what's going on. So I one of the ways I've phrased the sort of state of the state in the budget is she's trying to talk like a Republican while still acting like a liberal. Yeah. Right. So, as far as discussing how we do involuntary confinement, I'm glad she's having that discussion. Yeah. We have to work out the details on that.
But didn't Carl Hastie already say, like, the devil's in the details, basically say we're not even going to look at it?
Yeah, I mean, so there's going to be that dynamic. Yeah. However, I'm the ranking Republican member on the Mental Health Committee. Right. So that's sort of where I have been assigned to, take a larger role. And in my mind, if you walk by somebody on the street that's clearly mentally disturbed, cannot take care of themselves, they have not crossed the threshold to be a danger, physical danger to themselves or others, which is what you need to be involuntary committed currently, but they are living in squalor, with the demons that they're dealing with. How is it compassion to let them continue to live like that?
Exactly.
There has to be some balance between letting that person just live on the street or on the subway until they eventually hurt themselves or somebody else, and what we did in previous generations, which is we just threw people away and locked them up. Right. We don't want to go back to that.
Of course not.
And so there has to be a middle ground where, all right, clearly, if you cannot take care of yourself with the basic necessities of life, doesn't that qualify as a danger to yourself? Right. Right. And can't we try and get you the help that we can provide through our mental health office? So again, we have to sort out what's something we can all agree on that strikes that balance. But clearly, we have gone too far toward just leaving people out to their own devices. And I'm all for freedom. I'm all for people being allowed to live their life. but you certainly, there is a point you reach before you are physically harming yourself or somebody else where clearly you are not in a situation where we are acting with compassion toward our fellow human being.
Now, before we take our first break, a couple quick hits on what has been recently been said about Governor Hochul. What do you think about the cell phone ban in schools? Your wife a teacher? Any thoughts on it?
Yeah, I think that's one where I do think that's a good idea.
Yeah.
When I was a kid, we didn't have cell phones.
Right. We were fine.
So the idea that, I won't be able to contact my kid, like there are ways we can do this without compromising safety.
Right.
Right.
I totally agree.
And when we were kids, mom needed to get you, you called the school. Right. We could do things, again, there's always the how you do it, where maybe the cell phone is still physically in the school, but the kid isn't using it, and then, it went off, we can get it to you or something. Yeah, so there's, I don't want to compromise safety, but children should be learning when they're in school. So the concept I'm in favor of, we just got to make sure that all the details are handled correctly.
And last one, what do you think about the funding of school lunches?
Yeah, so that's in the budget. That's an expensive one. That's like
I didn't know it would be
$3
that.
billion.
Yeah.
And here's my concern with that. So currently, I am for feeding poor children. Just to be very clear, I'm
Thanks,
for
Joe.
feeding poor children. That is currently the law.
Yeah.
Poor children are eligible for free and reduced lunches. That is currently the law in the state of New York. What people on the left are saying is that is being underutilized by people who are already eligible for that program. So they are not taking advantage of it due to some sort of stigma or bureaucracy or what have you. Legitimate issue.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so if a child that's eligible for a free reduced lunch is not getting the food they need, that is compromising their education. It's a legitimate issue. So to me, the solution is allow a way to handle the bureaucracy so that the children are getting the food they need without the stigma. We can do something like that where,
Absolutely.
all right, everybody's got a card, you swipe it, and some people, their parents are
money
paying
on it,
into
and
it, and some people
yeah.
it's just a freebie, and nobody knows the difference. And so there's no stigma,
That's
no
what-
shame.
yeah.
We can do things where it's easier to sign up for the program, where we don't need to go through as extensive background and have people producing as much documentation. I'm all for that. But if you're saying the solution is children that are already eligible for a program are not taking advantage of it, as opposed to improving the bureaucracy around that program, we're just going to give free lunches to children who can afford to pay for their lunch to the tune of $3 billion.
Yeah.
That is an indictment of how we look at government. And so to me, the solution is we have a government program that's important, that I support, that is not being used correctly. Let's fix that government program as opposed to just
throwing
handing
money.
out
Yeah.
$3 billion of lunches to rich kids.
I know. That's what it is. All right, we got to take our first break. Stay with us. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking after this. The Frankly Speaking Roof Cam brought to you by Boss Security in Horseheads. Contact them today for all your business and home security needs. We are broadcasting live from the Hesselton studio, and in that studio, we have Assemblyman Joe Sempolinski. Hey, Joe.
It's a pleasure to be here.
All right, we talking about the New York State issues. Let's move on to something that we've been excited to talk about, which is the inauguration. What did you think?
Well, the inauguration is it's a sacred thing.
Yeah.
We have a system with a peaceful transfer of power that's important, and so it's a solemn event, whether it's indoors or outdoors. And
Which one do you like? Which one do you like better?
I mean, the outdoors has the ability of I've attended an outdoor inauguration where you get to all sort of be there. However, what I didn't understand, and I don't know if this is just a TDS thing.
Yeah, right.
But leading up to, and it was sort of pathetic actually, leading up to the inauguration, the day or two before, when it became clear that due to the bitter cold, you'd have to move it indoors, which I applaud President Trump for. That was the right decision. You don't want, some elderly person outside, having a health crisis, right? Because they want to be there. So he did the right thing. And it was a public safety thing. And the left tried to make failed, but tried to make some narrative you were seeing online of like, oh, this is because he's weak or something.
Yeah, he didn't think anybody would show up.
Right, yeah, it was, and I'm like, he did a decision to help protect the public.
Yes.
And now your knee-jerk reaction is just
It's got to be
he-
bad.
Right, exactly. He could stand there and give a speech that says, "I love puppies,"
Yeah.
and you'd be like, "What about cats?"
Yeah,
You know,
it
it's
is. It's that
that sort of reflex reaction to folks on the left. And to be fair, it seemed to be very much the online left, not your average, sort of person on the street. I think your average sort of center left Democrat is sort of, to some degree at least, realizing that, oh, wait a minute, there's a reason
this is
that
happening.
Trump won again. We messed up as far as what we've been talking about. We talked about in the last segment. All of a sudden, Governor Hochul is like, I got a law and order.
Yeah, exactly.
Yet doesn't want to do anything about cashless bail.
Oh yeah, right.
She really wanted to
Forget
deal with
that.
that, but
Put
look
that to
over
the
here.
side. Yeah.
But the rhetoric has suddenly
Completely
changed.
Oh yeah.
And so they're sort of seeing that, and so that'll be an interesting dynamic between the center left and the far left. I think there's going to be a push from the center left to we got to start talking about these issues and
We gotta
being
be
less
adults in the room,
right,
yeah.
and being less kooky and weird.
Yeah, to use the term.
That was the other thing I saw people point out how relatable Vice President Vance came across with his kids and his
was
wife,
great, wasn't
and
it?
a young family. We had similar observations with my inauguration, where several of the members are getting sworn in had young families, and how wonderful that was and how normal that was. And it was good to see that, because then you can sort of relate to other things that are going on with how the policy is affecting kids. I've already started talking with some of them about what policies can we support that would help young families. So you have this guy that they've tried to portray as weird, and he ends up being like
The most normal.
super normal.
Yeah.
And I say this, I saw a video last night after I got home. Speaker Johnson apparently realized that Vice President Vance had never been in the Oval Office before.
Oh, that was great, wasn't it?
Right.
Yeah.
And so he's now Vice President of the United States, so he can
Go
go
wherever
into
he
the Oval
wants.
Office. Right. And so I guess he worked with Trump, and so the three of them, they filmed. Like Johnson just filmed on his phone, so they're walking the Oval Office, and the president sort of gets out of the way to let Vance sort of walk in.
And take it all in.
And you may like J.D. Vance, may not like J.D. Vance. You may like his politics, may not like his politics. You may agree with decisions he made, you may not agree with decisions he's made. But the fact that still in this country, somebody who came from where he came, and the family background that he came from, and how nice was it to have his mother, who had overcome her addictions, there at the inauguration, to have that guy walk into the Oval Office as the Vice President of the United States of America.
Yeah. It was.
Politics aside, that's the American dream. I would hope Democrats get acknowledged that. I hope Republicans get acknowledged that you have somebody from that background get to that place in this country. You do not see that in most societies, ever.
Now, I remember during the primaries back in 2016, it was a really exciting time on the radio, and Ted Cruz's father called me because Ted Cruz
I
was
remember
still
that, yeah.
around. And he
Didn't somebody else call you? Somebody else?
Donald Trump in response to
Yeah,
Ted
right, yeah,
Cruz.
yeah.
But Ted Cruz's father called me, and I was so amazed that here he's calling Elmira Corning Market, and he's getting emotional talking about his son, like that he came from a parent of immigrants, and I mean he's actually getting emotional on the call. And then I see J.D. Vance up there with his wife, his beautiful wife and kids, and his mom. I'm thinking, how does he not break down?
I would lose it.
I don't know how you couldn't.
I mean, you saw my speech. I get talking about my daughter.
Yeah.
I get it gets a little dusty. It's getting dusty in here,
Yeah.
And everybody who's in public life has something that's motivating them.
Sure.
Right? Because you can usually make more money somewhere else. Some of those motivations are not the greatest thing in the world.
Right.
But a lot of them are very earnest.
Yeah.
And I think, and I've never met the vice president. I know people that know him, but I've never met him personally. I would assume that background, overcoming what he's overcome with his family, is a major motivating factor for what he does.
Oh, yeah.
Certainly it's something that he's very open talking about. That's the reason he's notable, is because he was talking about it and writing a book about it and what have you, and that's what put him into the popular consciousness. So, yeah, I think it's a major emotional moment, and I think it's something that's very American. It's like an Abe Lincoln sort of thing.
It really
Yeah.
is, and that's why I thought, and I'm so glad you brought up Vince because I was going to mention him later. That was such an extra special part to the whole inaugurations, and like you said, seeing his kids and
Right,
kind
yeah.
of watching how they're going to behave.
Yeah, like-
because I'm thinking I'm grumpy now. I've been watching it all day. I'm tired.
Because I saw, the people made a point about the kid had like a Band-Aid on his finger.
yeah,
So I was
yeah.
like, well, did they just want to wear a Band-Aid or whatever?
Or-
And for somebody who's, actually, I got a 6 and a 5-year-old, I have very nice children. I usually know how they're going to behave, but I know that, certain, JoJo doesn't maybe like crowds that much, and she sort of hides, and she
Yeah,
did a little
yeah.
bit of that at
Yeah,
the
yeah.
inauguration. So
Sure.
if you see the pictures, she's sort of hiding
yeah.
from the camera, and she's a little shy. Maddie's impatient.
Yeah.
Maddie likes to be first.
Sure.
She asked me why was she born second when she likes to be first so much, and it was a very interesting
That's
theological question I didn't have an answer to.
That's a good point.
But we went in alphabetical order. There were 6 of us. We did Republicans together. So there were 6 of us, and my last name starts with an S.
Oh yeah,
And so I was last.
yeah.
And so the whole time, all my colleagues are going, and I'm sitting in the audience next to Maddie,
Yeah.
my younger daughter, and she goes, "Are we next?" And I keep going, "No."
Uh-huh.
Are we next now? No.
it's
And so you have these funny things
How
with,
many days
with,
till
with children,
Christmas?
and I think anybody who is a parent,
It was
that's
so
what
relatable.
being a parent day to day is like, and so you see that in the Vice President of the United
And you
States.
also-
I think it's a wonderful thing.
And you had the pride that you saw in his wife. Like, I mean, the whole thing was. I mentioned on the show, and I'm not going to keep bringing it up, but there was a piece on the New York Post today that basically Kristen Fleming daring Vogue magazine, I think it was Vogue, to put Usha Vance on there because, like, why? Everything's become so political, and here could be an up and coming star,
Right.
Or both, Vance.
And I find it interesting that, it's only firsts when it's a liberal.
yeah, isn't that interesting?
Melania Trump's an immigrant.
Yeah.
Why don't we
Why is that?
talk
not
about
come
that
up?
a lot?
Yeah.
Well, Usha Vance is Indian American.
Yeah.
Why don't we
Why
talk
does that
about
never
that?
come up?
Why
Yeah.
does that put her on the front cover of every magazine and stuff? But it was wonderful to see a loving marriage like that. I was blessed to have I was sworn in on our family Bible. My wife was
that's so
holding
neat.
it,
Yeah.
and that was her. That's actually her Bible that we were sworn in on, and so having that around you, I think one makes you relatable. From Mr. Vance, you could see that it was making him very relatable to folks. But two, I think it sets a wonderful example that hey, isn't this nice to have make your family a priority and do that. That's a good thing.
A quick step before we take a break. Back to the inauguration. You've given a lot of speeches in your life, a lot, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
in a lot of different venues.
A lot of different venues.
Yeah.
Could you, and you may be able to do this, I know I couldn't, could you get up in front of that crowd and speak about how bad the people all around you are? Not all people, but
Yeah.
in an intimate setting,
Yeah.
and go on and talk about the people because you kind of beat both of them, Biden and Harris.
Yeah.
Then you got, of course, Hillary there. You got Obama, but Bush too. He's going after all of them, and there's no don't you think you'd I'm not going to choose that word, or
In many ways, that's the job I signed up for.
yeah, that is true.
Because
Yeah, I forgot about that.
the state assembly is 103 Democrats
Yeah.
and 47 Republicans.
Yeah, that's true.
And so anytime a Republican gets up and discusses a bill or debates a bill, they are at least implicitly saying,
You're doing a
you
bad job."
guys don't
Yeah.
know what the heck you're doing.
Yeah.
So, I better get used to that, given the job I have. But the other thing I point out is I used to be the congressman for Ithaca, New York.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And I'm not their cup of tea.
No.
I was in committee yesterday, and I sat next to the Assemblywoman from Ithaca.
Oh yeah.
She's new to the committee, and I'm new to the committee, so the junior members of each party sort of sit next to each other, and they go seniority this way. And so I introduced myself. I said, "Oh, you represent Ithaca?" And she's like, "Yeah," and what have you. So I am used to dealing with people who do not agree with me.
Right.
Sometimes you have to be very blunt and say, "Listen, you're wrong.
Yeah, right.
What your policies are destructive. You should not be doing this." And there's definitely a time and place for that, and I think increasingly a time and place for that. But you sort of got to do it in a way where, okay, maybe you disagree with somebody 8 times out of 10, and you should call them out for those 8 times out of 10. But you want to do it in a way where the 2 times out of 10 where you still agree that you can still figure out a way to be productive. So that's a balancing act. So I'm all for attacking policy. I'm all for insulting policy.
Yes, yes.
I'm all for being snarky about policy. I'm all for calling out bad behavior, like
Sure.
if Andrew Cuomo,
Yeah.
puts in place policies that kill thousands of senior citizens.
Should probably come up.
I'm cool bringing that up.
Yeah.
Please don't elect him mayor of New York City if anybody down there is
The
listening.
polls aren't. Oh, man.
Literally anybody but him.
Yeah.
But I don't like the sort of I'm going to attack you.
Yeah.
And to be fair to President Trump, I think he was attacking policy.
He was.
I don't think I don't think
we put.
I don't think
people's names
anything
in his
he
head. Yeah.
right. I don't think anything he said, from what I saw, crossed the line into something that I viewed as inappropriate.
No. All right, we got to take a short break. Stay with us. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking after this. Frankly Speaking Roof Cam brought to you by Boss Security in. Oh, yeah, you see it? That's beautiful. Yeah, isn't that beautiful? Yeah.
Walked in, it was dark, and now it's
I know. And still got some of the lights up. It's
beautiful Market Street.
A little chilly. As you can hear, we have Joe Sempolinski in on the program. I'll get the camera off because everybody likes to stare at themselves.
Hey, yeah.
I know how it works. So what do you think of Trump so far? I'm speculating. I don't know the answer to this. I wish someone would do a study, like maybe Media Research Center. Trump's almost had to speak to the media more in the first 3 days than Biden did the whole 4 years.
Well, I would think. I mean,
gotta get
what was
close.
also a lot of the transition around the inauguration. There's a lot of imagery that sets the tone. We talked about in the last segment the imagery surrounding the vice president and his family. Another image that I thought was a positive image was Trump sitting behind the Resolute desk in the Oval Office with all the cameras on him, and he's just, he's not on a teleprompter,
No.
he's not on a script, he doesn't have somebody like hustling him away.
He's supposed to go to an inaugural ball, and he gives a 45-minute press conference.
Right, and so that level of contrast with the Biden administration, which was so contained and controlled, and now we know why, but whatever, we suspected, we talked about it, but it turned out to be true.
We were right the whole time.
Right, there you go. The contrast to, hey, all right, I'm going to sit at the business end of all these cameras and do what you want to do, go for it.
Yeah.
And people respect that.
Yeah.
I've tried to conduct myself as best I can in a similar fashion where I'm very accessible to people. I've already, been at. I'm the junior guy, so I wasn't in a speaking role, but I've already been at multiple press conferences like that. We're in the Assembly. Congressman Lawler, who I think there's a decent chance he's one of our candidates for governor. He gave sort of a pre-State of the State.
Yeah, I saw that
thing.
Did a good job.
I've known Mike for 15 years. We had we chatted a little bit before the press conference, but if you look over Mike's shoulder and over, and I'll give Mike credit. He was doing the same thing where he gave his speech and then he was just taking questions and he was good to go. We had a press conference yesterday. I'm on the People with Disabilities Committee. There are only 2 Republicans on that committee. It's a very small committee. And so the ranking member was who's Jody Giglio, which is confusing because I used to work for Mr. Giglio, spelled the same, but her name is Giglio, from Long Island, who's the ranker again on that committee. She had a press conference on early intervention, which is near and dear to my heart. This is the program for young children with disabilities. And so, just being open and taking questions. So I thought that was a sea change in the presidency. So
also,
it's
the fact
important to
that
the job.
He gave an inaugural address and then gave a second inaugural address minutes later.
And he had a rally the day before.
And then another rally after the because I'm thinking, boy, is his voice going to hold up? Because that was one of the longer inaugural speeches.
Yes. Yeah.
And then he goes and gives a longer speech.
Right.
Moments after.
I'm guessing this is intentional. There are. Donald Trump is a remarkable, unique individual, right?
Yeah,
I think even people that don't like him
should
point
admit that.
out. And there are certain things that he is, I think he is to publicity, and as Wayne Gretzky is to hockey, right? Or he's just this genius about it. And so I think what he does in these things is either very thought out or instinctually very good. And I would wager, that the reason for doing these sort of things is to produce a vigor contrast with Mr. Biden.
Absolutely.
Right. All right, this guy was having trouble walking and talking.
Yeah.
And I'm going to go and do a publicity marathon right out of the gate
On day
to show,
one.
all right, there is now actually a president.
Right, and I don't want to speak for you, but back in the day, you might have been a little bit of a WWF fan at that point, WWE.
I'm familiar
Okay.
with the squared circle.
Okay,
Yes.
good. When he was signing the executive orders and throwing out the pens, like when I heard they put the desk in the arena, I'm like, this is going to be beautiful.
Yeah. Well, we're talking about a guy that has
Yeah.
participated in WrestleMania.
Yeah.
You know, he had a hair shaving
Yeah, yeah.
bet with Vince McMahon, if
That's
I remember
right.
So he's taken a Stone Cold Stunner.
Yes,
as far
yeah,
as
yes.
so there is the reason I bring it up is there is a theatricality and a
100%.
flair for the dramatic with Mr. Trump.
Yeah.
And there always has been since before he was in politics. That's why, I mean, there are other property developers in Manhattan.
Right.
The reason that this particular property developer became a household name is because of that sort of genius for publicity. So he has that little extra flair on things.
He does.
That I think is in many ways coming out of that school. I mean, Linda McMahon's in his cabinet.
Yeah,
so
yeah,
he
yeah. He
knows that
And then
industry.
when he introduces Barron, and Barron just goes,
Yeah, he did this.
yeah,
I saw that. Right,
I'm like,
right.
that's when it kind of all came together. I'm like,
Yeah.
what does this make me think of? But,
Right.
But yeah, that was an amazing day.
He
But
can cut a good promo.
he
Is that
can
what
cut
we're
a good,
saying?
yes,
Yeah.
exactly. But it's been interesting because I don't think, and we talked about this on the program quite a bit, that the media has learned its lesson. Now, I watched the inaugural. I try to catch different channels because I want to get the vibe of maybe people that don't the feel for people that don't like them. I felt like it was more stoic, more depressing sounding coverage than Jimmy Carter's funeral.
Yeah. That has been an interesting thing because the first time
Yeah.
the reaction from the left was shock and rage.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, I was in Washington for the inauguration 8 years ago, and I viewed it from the crowd, and then they had the parade, and I was sort of just outside the security perimeter in downtown DC. I figured I'd walk around before I drove home, and I had just people freaking out.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
It hasn't been shock and rage this time. I think it's been depression.
That's what it seems like.
There's probably still anger there, but there's depression. And I think the shock difference is, something happens once that you don't expect. It's one thing. It's something. This is now the third time he's run for president. This is not shocking. The idea that he would be a competitive or winning candidate for the presidency. So that factor is different. But I think the other thing is the clarity of the election in the sense that in 2016 you at least had the fig leaf of the Electoral College thing.
Yeah.
Hillary got more popular votes, whatever. And I'm a big Electoral College guy.
Yeah.
You would obviously campaign differently if you didn't have the Electoral College, so the popular vote thing is overblown. But they had that to discuss. This time there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it.
No.
He won.
Yes.
He won clear. He won every swing state. He won the popular vote. He won.
Yeah.
It was a rejection, clearly, of the policies of the Biden administration. And so there is no sort of anger. It's this depression because I think there's knowledge that,
Oh yeah.
we got this isn't a fluke.
No, this is legit.
There's a fundamental problem
Yeah.
with how the Democratic Party is functioning, and now you're staring down the barrel of 8 years of President Vance.
Yeah, exactly.
And
And
that's something that I think they're looking at. They may have a generation out of power, and they're trying to figure out what to do with it.
And I think the media is having trouble saying, "Oh my goodness, look at what he's doing with whatever it is, pardons, executive orders," because he's been campaigning on these things. It's kind of fascinating to me.
Right.
We're so used to, and specifically the media is so used to seeing somebody run, a Harris, an Obama, whatever, say all these grandiose things. Then if they get in there, they know they're not going to be able to get it. They're not going to do them right. Trump has been campaigning on the exact things he's done. Day number one, most of them.
Yeah,
but now working on them.
Well, on the pardons thing,
Yeah.
how could you can have your personal opinion on any of the particular pardons, but how could a Democrat go after Trump on pardons given what Biden did the morning,
Not
that morning?
like as he's walking out basically into the inauguration.
The difference in time between Biden's pardons of his family and what have you, and Trump starting to pardon folks is hours.
Hours, yeah.
So you didn't say anything this morning, but now you're mad, and I've seen that's been another one where I think there's a lot of angst on the left regarding Biden for a couple reasons. Is they know his pardons are really indefensible. You know, Trump's not pardoning his family. Biden's literally pardoning his family.
Do this every time you try to take
Oh,
me
I
off. You try to
bump
take
it?
me off. Yeah.
Oh,
I'll
my
take
goodness,
it.
I'm sorry, I bumped
It's
the
now on
camera.
you. It's now all on you.
Oh, I'm sorry. There we go. I apologize.
There.
I get all worked up.
Yeah, that's okay.
So, you know, so they're really indefensible. So now you've got people being putting the camera in their face. Democrats going, got to defend that. So they don't like that. I think they think he stayed in the race too long.
Yeah.
I think they think he probably should never have run in the
their
first
fault.
place.
That's their fault.
That's exactly right, Frank. They're reaping what they sowed with how they handled Biden.
Yeah.
And they know they're up a certain creek without a certain path.
Yeah, exactly. And I remember you were on this program saying that probably one of the biggest parts of Biden's legacy, if not the biggest, it will be studied in history books, is the pardon of Hunter.
I agree.
He just added more to it, though, with the rest of the family.
And he doubled, tripled, quadrupled down on that.
Yeah.
And you know, that's, you know, the guy's been in public life for 50 years, and that's how he decided to go out.
I guess.
And
but if
that's
you're-
all on him.
But if your whole party's been stabbing you in the back and doing all that, saying the stuff they've been doing, why not just say, you know what, I'm going for it.
It's what he did.
Protect my family. They say my legacy's no good anyway, you know?
That was the choice that Mr. Biden made.
Yep. All right, we got to take a short break. Stay with us. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking after this. Frankly Speaking Roof Cam, brought to you by Boss Security in Horseheads. Contact them today for all your business and home security needs. We are back with Assemblyman Joe Sempolinski, former congressman and Steuben County Republican chair. I love the idea of Gulf of America. Do you like that?
I saw one tweet where it's freezing on the southeast coast. It was like, the Gulf of Mexico never froze. Why is it going? No,
it's one of those things that's so perfect about Trump.
Right, it's a very Trump thing.
Yeah.
And frankly, I don't know how you could argue with it. It's surrounded by North America.
Yeah.
And there's as much of the United States of America bordering it as Mexico. So why can't it be the Gulf of America? Mexico is in North America. I think it's wonderful.
The other thing,
Gulf of America, I'm all for it.
We're going to get to some viewer comments. I'm sorry. When Joe's on, I sometimes miss some of them because we get chatting. But the other one, I like all these like bureaucrats and things and all these articles. They're scared. They're costing jobs. Federal DEI workers put on leave. Like all of a sudden we're supposed to be worried about these things.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah. Again, going back to promises made, promises kept. That's what Trump always said. I would have been shocked if he didn't do these things.
Yeah, right. He said he was going to bring efficiency to the government. And these sort of things, you know, we talk about executive orders. And, you know, certainly over time, and I'm not talking about any particular president, but over time there has been sort of creep of, are you really legislating with executive orders? Handling the federal workforce and policies regarding the federal workforce is clearly something that is within the purview of an executive order. Yeah. That's what executive orders are really for, is to give orders to the bureaucrats about how they're supposed to implement the policy that's created by the Congress. That's how an executive order is supposed to work. So to say, listen, we've got these, you know, things that don't make any sense. Can't we be more efficient with them? I'm all for that.
All right, next, or a comment from a viewer. I'm watching Joe on the go. Someone's watching you from out of New York State. They figured out how to do it. So I'm
fantastic.
watching Joe on the go. Love his take on everything.
We're going worldwide.
We are. There you go. Comment from a different viewer. Good morning to both of you. Well, thank you. Good morning. And congratulations to you, Joe, on your win.
Thank you. I appreciate that. That's very nice. Thank you.
And Ken from Horseheads writes in, obviously Hochul isn't making the decisions herself. Does Joe have a sense of who her handlers are?
This is an interesting question. I think it's a different dynamic than like a Biden thing where, you know, Biden, it was sort of this medically compromised sort of thing. With Hochul, the sort of thing around her was she was sort of never supposed to be governor. Right. She was picked as lieutenant governor. She wasn't even Cuomo's first lieutenant governor.
No.
Bob Duffy was the lieutenant governor for Cuomo's first term, the former mayor of Rochester. And now he runs the Chamber of Commerce in Monroe County or something. So she was this, you know, second LG who comes in and, you know, sort of went around and sort of softened the Cuomo image because she's this grandma that's, you know, sort of friendly or whatever. And now all of a sudden she's in the big job, and there's been this persistent question that I think has gotten worse, not better, as to whether she is really capable of doing the job. And it's gotten a little awkward even in her speeches, where she sort of feels awkwardly that she has to assert that I'm tough, you know, I'm on top of things, and you have to, you know, it's like if you have to say I'm the king, you're not the king, sort of, to quote Game of Thrones. So there is this legitimate question as to is she ready for this? Is she up for this?
I've said on the program, I don't think she's ready for prime time in the purely political sense, because she gets up there, it's almost like she wants that popularity that Cuomo had at some point, and you saw the DNC where she kind of fumbled her speech,
Right.
and she doesn't like, I think, in my opinion, when they lost the House, Democrats lost the House last go around, and they started blaming a lot of it on Hochul, and rightfully so.
Yeah, Pelosi straight up said it.
Yeah,
that was her fault.
And I think she doesn't want that I'm not as good as the rest of them kind. It's
Right.
almost like she's got a chip on her shoulder.
There's a
but
little-
she
I agree
can't-
with that.
She can't back it up though.
That's right. I would say that's a fair assessment. And then, as we talk about the budget process, where she's going to proposal, and then the legislature is going to come over the top on her, and that'll be an interesting negotiation because over time, the legislature was afraid of Andrew Cuomo, which was not a good situation for the state. That was not a healthy situation for the state,
But it's a
where
fact.
they handed him all this COVID power and they were afraid to take it back. It was just really constitutionally perverse. We've gone too far the other way, where the legislature has no fear of her, and so they're going to, take her lunch money. I think.
Yeah.
In the
Well, that's why
negotiation.
Hasty was so that involuntary commitment. Let's relax. It's almost one of the things. I understand what you're doing.
It's
but
sort
we'll
of a
talk
message
about-
from the speaker, like, I'm really in charge.
We'll talk about it later.
Yeah.
One of those kind of things.
That's nice what the governor says, but okay, I'm in charge.
All right, there's so much more we could talk about. I'm sorry I missed so many questions this morning, but we had so much to cover.
We get going.
and
You get the real talk happening.
You do,
That's what the people want.
That's what they want. So what's important is, because you're also Steuben County Republican
Yes.
chair, upcoming local races. What's scary, we've had a couple interviews about this. We've talked about it. If people are thinking about running, they got to make that decision.
Yeah, if you want to
today,
run,
basically.
if you want to be elected in November, you got to make that decision over the next month.
Yeah.
And so it's a local election year. We're in the process. We'll see if this law holds up, but there'll be fewer elections in odd numbered years down the road. I don't agree with that law, and that's
How
being
does that
challenged
work
in the
for
courts.
petitions?
So what'll happen for this year is if you're elected to a local position that is impacted by this law, which cities are not, it's just towns and certain county positions, which is all the more confusing. Basically, if normally you would have been running for a 4-year term, your term is 3 years. If normally you'd be running for a 2-year term, your term is 1 year.
But if it doesn't hold up in court, are all your petitions null and void if you put 3 years on it?
Well, unless there is something where there needs to be clarity, you don't have to put the term of office. So
okay.
if you're running for town supervisor, there's only one town supervisor. You don't have to put the term of office. Where
I
it comes
see.
up is if there's a special election where,
Yeah.
let's say, town board, somebody resigns, and you got to make it
Gotcha.
clear I'm running for the 1 year or the 3-year term, not for the full 4-year term. That's the only time where it might be an issue. But if you just say I'm running for X town supervisor, then it's moot or whatever. The offices that are up, we have 2 county coroner positions. Those are our county-wide positions that are up. There are 4 Steuben County coroners. 2 of them are up this year. We have had a lot of judges going up. We don't have a judge race this year. We've had a lot of those recently, but not this year. So that'll be a change from last year. And then about half of the county legislature is up. Most town supervisors are up. About half of the town board members in the county are up. So this is very heavy local and county election year.
So this is your chance to get involved either by running
Right.
or by taking out petitions for these people, because this isn't an easy job getting the petition
No,
signed.
especially the time of year that we do it. So please do send me an email, joe.sempolinski@gmail.com, if you want to get involved. The petition process is mostly handled by the county Republican committee. If you're these folks that are running for coroner, they need 1,000 signatures, just like they're running for sheriff or state senate or what have you. It's an onerous process to get out there and collect. So we always do need people that are willing to help, and it's a very important part of the process. The other things that will be on the ballot is there will be 2 state Supreme Court. That's will be the highest thing that's on the ballot is we're in a judicial district with Rochester and the Finger Lakes, and there'll be 2 slots that are up. So that'll be the top of the ticket, a little bit on the county and a lot town and city.
Get involved.
Yeah.
I just want people
It's
to.
part of the process.
It's part of the
man.
process,
It's,
and-
it's what America's all about.
And like I always say, win, lose, or draw, at the end of the day, you can pat yourself on the back, because everybody deserves a little credit for running. It's not the easiest.
I would concur.
Yeah.
Even I've said this to people who I vehemently disagree with, that I at least respect them for putting their name forward.
This is a dumb way to end the interview, but I was just thinking as you were giving your email, I used to pick on Phil Palmisano and make him give his official email on the radio, because it's radio, and it was like philip.palmisano.usassembly.com. It was like the longest thing. You beat him.
And you got to spell Palmisano, you got to spell Sempolinski. You know,
and it's probably Joseph, right? So you beat him.
My official one, people
Well, you
want
don't
it.
have to- you don't
It's
have to
Sempolinski J at nyassembly.gov.
Oh, okay, so no, you got-
Sempolinski J. And
they
my
learned their
personal is
lesson.
joe.sempolinski@gmail.
There you go. You learn. So you're having fun. Congratulations. I can't believe how quickly that went. Not for you probably, but from when you announced to being sworn in.
It's been a weird, and I said this also in my speech.
Yeah.
The last 3.5 years
Yeah.
have been unusual.
You have a very strange resume.
That I am a object of fascination and curiosity in Albany by both
Yeah.
Republicans and Democrats.
Yeah.
And I've had many people approach me saying, "What was that? You did what? Who are you?" And,
Yeah.
and I'm always happy to explain it because I think my story. We talked about sort of the Vance story being all American. I think my story over the last several years is a very American story
It
as
is,
well, in
yeah.
the sense that my dad wasn't president, or
Right.
whatever. It's just, you can be a regular person, work hard, and it's not about how long you serve. It's not about what order you serve in the offices. It's about representing the people. And I've said this many, many times, but I believe it to my core. It's sacred. Most people in this world have not had a voice, and to be the voice of now 135,000 people, before 750,000 people, it's a sacred thing.
Do you sometimes wear your congressional pin and go, "Oops, I wore the wrong pin today"? No. I got to go. We're out of time.
I have not.
Joe, thanks for spending time with us. We'll be back tomorrow morning at 6. Tune in.